All righty. Let me see. I'm gonna go here. So first of all, I want to welcome everybody to John G. Jones Research Lodge number 147. Some of you have been with us for quite a while here. I just want to say it's indeed a pleasure to have you on with me tonight. For those of you who got the invite, definitely glad to have you on. I have one of our own, Professor James Small. I mean, what can you really say about a man who's traveled the world, who can really break down a lot?
Yeah.
How you doing?
Okay, now I can hear you. They said we had lost sound for a while.
Who's the host? Did I change somebody over to the host? Who's the host?
I think it might have been
You
me.
are host. You are host.
Did I change somebody to the host?
No,
I think
you're
it
the
might have
host.
been.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, I don't know what was happening with that. We did lose audio. I think Brother James Small, I think he logged off. Oh, there he is. Okay.
No, I'm still here. We had lost audio for a while.
Yeah, I couldn't figure it out right there. Okay, so everybody, we should be back. We should be good now. So as I was saying, what I want to happen is that and the brothers can go ahead and introduce themselves real quick for me. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear.
Okay, go ahead and
Yep.
start introducing yourselves. If you're on here, I need you to introduce yourself.
Yes, sir. Professor James Smalls. Hey, thank you. First and foremost, thank you tremendously, man, for all the work that you've done. You've inspired so many of us, and we want to thank you within and out of the Masonic community, no matter the jurisdiction. So sincerely, I want to go ahead and thank you for the tremendous work, for the knowledge that you've put out there. And I mean, I'm talking about some of the free content that you've put out there. I know you've been doing this for over 50 years, well over 50 years, and just want to tell you sincerely, I thank you from watching you with the dreadlocks to now where, you know, we got the same haircut. So, you know, I got the Professor James Small, you know, a startup kit right now. So hopefully I can bring the knowledge up there with that too as well. Once again, I'm Brother Baron Reynolds. I serve as the Grand Junior Warden of the original King Solomon Grand Lodge here in Ohio, where our worshipful master is Grandmaster, is Grandmaster Kevin Knight, affiliated with Mount Hermon number 5 out of Akron, Ohio, where our worshipful master is going to be worshipful master Michael Portis. And I'm under the General Grand Masonic Congress of the United Ancient Free and Accepted Scottish Rite Masons of North America. And that's where our President General is going to be Ernest L. Bynum, and our Vice President is going to be Oliver L. Morris. But I'm so excited to go ahead and watch a lot of this stuff go on. Watch the Hidden Colors, watch you on Sonetta, all the way to Out of Darkness, with the latest Out of Darkness that's out right now. You guys, I'm telling you, if I start repeating some of your lineups, just know that I'm telling you, I'm a huge fan. So, but sincerely, man, you know, a lot of people don't get a chance to tell the great ones. You know, thank you for the legacy that you leave behind, and I definitely want to thank you ahead of time. So, peace and blessings to you.
Peace and blessings, my brother, and thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right, Brother John Hall.
Yes, sir. Greetings, everyone.
Greetings, my brother.
Greetings.
Yes, I am Brother John Hall from Progressive Lodge number 7 in Norfolk, Virginia, of Free and Accepted Ancient York Rite Masons, Prince Hall Origin National Compact, in and for the United States of America and the Bahamas. And I bring you greetings. And I just want to say that I am truly blessed and honored to be on this panel. When I heard the name at first, I did not know until Brother Hawkins said, well, I need you to, Brother Hall, to look up this brother first, and then you give me a call back. And as soon as I looked up your names, Professor Small, I was like, wow, phenomenal of all the accomplishments you have done and continue to do for the Black community. I just want to say thank you. And I just ask to keep on doing what you're doing. And I heard the mention of the Hidden Colors DVD. So when I heard that, I was like, oh, now I know of them. So I'm just blessed to be here, and I'm just here to gain all the knowledge and to just gain knowledge as itself and to get a better understanding of Freemasonry when it's dealing with us as Black people. So I'm just basically thrilled. I'm just going to like sit back, relax, and gather all of it in. So I just want to thank you, sir.
Thank you, my brother. Peace and blessings.
King Torres.
Greetings, everyone. Brother Tyrus from Grand Lodge John D. Jones, California. Grand Junior Deacon. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you, sir.
All right,
It's an
Brother
honor.
Merrill. Okay. Brother Sanchez, can you speak? All right, we're going to leave it at that. We have, like I said, Brother James Smalls with us tonight. Professor, let me correct myself. Professor James Smalls. So I'm going to let him introduce himself because I read his accolades and I was like, nah, sometimes you just got to let it be where it's at. So he's here. He can introduce himself to everybody, and I'll let him take the floor.
Yes, sir. I'm Brother James Small, and I'm of Cornerstone 37, the most worshipful Prince Hall Grand Lodge of the most ancient and honorable fraternity of Freemasonry of the state of New York. You know, I come from where I could see many of you brothers come from, born into a Christian tradition in South Carolina, spent a number of years in the Islamic tradition as an imam, did make Hajj to Mecca back in 85, 75. Sometimes I forget my age. Worked very strongly with Dr. Ben. Before I came into Prince Hall, my family has a tradition. My grandpa, my father, everybody, the family. You know, when you're from South Carolina, everybody's in the lodge. But I got inducted into a pathway, and for the time I'll just call it a pathway, through Chad in 1974 via the president then of Chad, Tumpo Bye-Bye, who was assassinated shortly thereafter. That pathway is referred to sometimes as the ancient craft of Amun-Ra. It is the father and mother of the craft we call Freemasonry. I'm a priest in that craft at this time as well. Trying to learn. The key, one of the, you know, I was imam over the Muslim Mosque Inc. Some of you know Malcolm X founded that mosque after leaving the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. But he didn't leave the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. He took those teachings with him. And that's something people need to understand. One of the greatest teachers we had was the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, but I think most people don't understand his coming. And I pray that you young generation really get it, because he didn't just came for those who said salam alaikum. He came for all of us. And he came with the body of knowledge. We call part of that body of knowledge Freemasonry, but the body of knowledge is how to build through character development, ethical, moral, and intellectual, a man. How to build a man whose pattern was after God itself, whose structure was based on the design of cosmology and ecology. We sometimes make things too difficult. We got so, you know, when the white folks got a hold of our body of knowledge and they produced what they produced coming out of England, they weren't hiding it from us at that point. They were hiding it from their own people, because a handful of them wanted to say, well, we got a way of being. We don't want the rest of our people to have. We're not trying to raise everybody up to be human beings. That was not the way of the craft in Africa. The way of the craft itself is the way of life of the society. Okay? Yet it must have its, of course, its degrees and its step, because you can't get to step 5 if you haven't do 1, 2, 3, and 4, because they prepare you for 5. But you weren't restricting the body of knowledge to a handful of elite. And we've grown, unfortunately, into that syndrome in the Black community. The best of the teacher was to raise the least of the creature. And we haven't been doing that. We've been making partnership with those who have a glimmer of light, not realizing that glimmer of light don't belong to you, belong to God. It was given to you to give to those who had no light, those who could not see. And so when I think of Freemasonry, and I've been doing some lectures trying to tell, because I had to step out and do those lectures, because Black young people were attacking an institution that is one of the greatest institutions we've ever produced, particularly in North America and the Caribbean. And so when I hear all these attacks on Freemasonry, they're really not talking about Black Freemasonry, but they make us all one. And in our condition, in our need for raising our young people ethically, morally, and principally, we need to use the try and prove an institution that our ancestors have left us and not abandon them. And what has occurred is an abandonment of one of the greatest institutions we've ever produced. And you can look at all of our great men from the late 1700s to present, they all passed through Prince Hall Grand Lodge. And so there's something to that then. There's something to create so many characters that can do so much good and yet take no credit. Rarely take a credit. From Prince Hall to Richard Allen to Booker Washington, to W. Du Bois, to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, to Dr. Martin Luther King, you can just name them. Adam Clayton Powell, name them. And there's hardly one you could name that didn't change our society and made America a more humane place to live in that wasn't a member of Prince Hall Grand Lodge. Not one. And so when I see the lodge coming under such attack, I had to kind of step out there. And I know some people say, well, you know, you're going a little too far, Brother Small. No, I go where God takes me, you see. And so to get our young people to understand that there is an institution that you can become a part of and grow. Hip hop is not a culture, okay? No disrespect to those young people who were trying to do something good, but the enemy took it and perverted it into something bad. So I'm not gonna, it was a tiny aspect of the African-American culture, but media made it so influential. And those who use the skills and talents of our brilliant young minds to injure our social contract with one another in terms of the labels we put on our women and our men and one another, and in terms of the standard we gave for living in terms of what our relationship was to drugs or to killing and so forth. We have to understand somebody did that. It didn't happen in some natural formulation, okay? That was a psycho-spiritual attack on our community. And there's only a few institutions strong enough to combat it. One, the most principal one, is Prince Hall Freemasonry. Two, the Nation of Islam is the only tried and proven organization that took the dead and raised it back to living. People don't want to discuss it, but if you listen to my speeches, I've been calling it out for decades. And people say, well, how do you do that? You're supposed to be Malcolm's man. Well, Malcolm was Elijah's man. Malcolm never denounced that. He screwed up in the beginning. He was angry, scared, but at the end of his day, he did not deny the messenger, but no one wants to talk about that. But see, I was the imam over that mosque at age 21. And I had to deal with all of that stuff that was going on in 66 and 67 and 68 and 69. And I learned from that, you know, that this body of knowledge that we ritualistically teach and instruct in, that we call Freemasonry, needs to be raised like it once was as the tool to lift our masses. And if we make the mistake that the enemy has made, and we have to some degree, think we have some elite little club made for a few, then we may as well die with those who are on the bottom.
I do have a question real quick, because I know I've been a Mason now 35 years, so I'm pretty young in it. And what I've seen in Masonry is that we do a lot of damage to ourselves, being from the various jurisdictions. I'm a this, I'm a that. And I see that we do a lot of damage to ourselves. What is it that we can do as Masons to build that bridge between Prince Hall and other jurisdictions out there? Because I see that we hurt ourselves a lot of times.
And I agree with you. And this is where knowledge is. The knowledge is singular. One jurisdiction don't have a different body of knowledge, you know, and then another has a different, it's the same body of knowledge. There's only one sun. That sun shines on China as well as South Carolina. That same moon shines in Italy, shines in the Bahamas. the laws of nature are the same no matter where you stand on this planet. And fundamentally, at the end of the day, what we're really talking about is the laws of cosmology as discerned through observation and contemplation by our ancestors, and the laws of nature, and how the human being can be in harmony with that. And to take those fundamental laws, which they did, and turn it into social contracts with one another, and turned it into behavioral tools to develop the human character. That's what we're supposed to be doing. We say when we come into to make what? To do what? To make a good man better. What do we mean by to make a good man better? What are we talking about? To help you get a better job? To get you a promotion? To get you into a particular club? Or to help you develop the kind of character that will allow you to go back into your household and your family and grow that character into a family, and to allow that family to partner with other families in the community and grow that character into a community and let that character become your nation. And we are not focused like that right now. We focus on this elitism that came out of Europe. And let's understand, nobody wakes up one day and have a body of knowledge intact. You got to get it. If you got it intact and you can start something in the 1700s, you got it from somewhere. And so we all accept the Knights Templars and the Knights Hospitallers. Then what is the history of the Knights Hospitallers? What is the history of the Knights Templars?
Right.
Where were they in Northeast Africa? You know, what did they learn coming out of ancient Egypt?
Mm-hmm.
You know, we can take, and I used to play with it when I was younger, and I always say, God gave me that. I can take the 99 pearls of faith, 99 names of Allah. I can take 99 of the Netcherus or the Netters from ancient Kemet. I can take 99 of the Orishas from Nigeria. I can take 99 of the Loas from the Voodoo, and I can juxtapose, and you can see the same school of thought, the same quality and attributes of the divine in all those different cultures. The same thing. So what's going on? There's a body of knowledge that is universal. The Chinese use it, the Japanese use it, everybody uses this body of knowledge, but within the context of their own culture.
So how is it that we who are Black Masons, a lot of people don't like to say, well, Black Masons, no, we who are Black Masons, for us, how can we take that same content of knowledge that we all know that we possess and use that for the uplift of our communities, no matter where we're at, but just to be the example of how one should be?
Right. Well, the key thing is we must study history at all junctures. History seems so mundane. You tell people, study history. It's like, I don't have time for that. I got to get the economics together. I got to get the politics. No, let me tell you, history erases the mystery and allow you to learn how to construct the economic foundation, the political foundation, and the cultural foundation that will allow you to ensure food, clothing, shelter, and safety for yourself and your families. Now, if you don't tie those things together, you are not really teaching truth.
Mm-hmm.
Because fundamentally, we're trying to feed ourselves. We're trying to clothe ourselves. We're trying to house ourselves. And I'm sure that was the first impetus for a brotherhood. How do we do this in unity? How do we do this together? How do we build an economic foundation governed by a political foundation and instructed and informed by the spiritual core of the culture, which is your educational system that you produce? But your educational system is produced on the ethical and moral principles that have been proven historically to be true and tried. And so for us today, we have to make sure we master first the history of Prince Hall, because that's so, you know, there's an anti-African American trend in almost everything in America. When I study the history of African Americans, then I'll come back to your question. I'm gonna go around the corner with it.
Mm-hmm.
Slavery, and they tell us about 1619. Slavery in 1619, you weren't talking about 50 people. You don't get a serious slavery process in North America until nearly the 1700s with any significant number of people. 165 years later, it's over. That's not 400 years. The population of Africa and North America was enslaved less than any other population in the Western Hemisphere. But somehow people tell us we've lost everything. Maybe we've lost less than anybody. But if you don't know what you had, you won't know what you lost. That's where history comes in. See, history is your mirror to see who you are right now. Okay? And when you want to really find Africa and Black America, you got to go into the church. Yes, Christianity have committed a lot of crimes against us, but since it was the only sanctuary for us for nearly 200 years, almost 300 years now, we hid ourselves there. Now, how do we find ourselves? That's a history study. How do we find, when I go into the African Baptist Church, the African Methodist Church, the colored method, whatever the names our people took, how do I find the African principles and rituals that they hid in there in order to continue to survive as human beings and thrive? Because no society of enslaved people, Haiti notwithstanding, fought an extraordinary revolution, but lost at the end of the day when Dessalines is assassinated. Been struggling ever since. So we can't get caught up in the fantasy of saying a revolution had a success motif when it didn't. We have to see what aspect of it was successful and why it didn't finish the process. And let's look at the African American. We were the third largest population of Africans in the Western Hemisphere, with the first being Brazil and Colombia. And then we are the third. We have waged a war against white false notion of supremacy, racism, and genocide unrelentingly for the entire period we've been here. No other group in the Western Hemisphere had to fight a white majority nation state that had constructed the nation state to be their new Mecca, but we had to. All of the other communities in this hemisphere was a majority Black community. You understand? With a minimal white military occupation and administration. But we in North America, they made this their new Jerusalem. They made this their new Mecca. And yet we were in it and had to take it on. And we're still taking it on. This conversation is taking it on, okay? No other group in the history of the world have had to do what we've had to do. And yet we allow other people who do not know our history to demean our efforts and not understand what we have produced in this nation to create a greater humanity than it ever had any intent of creating for everybody.
So someone just put in the chat where you mentioned that, or let me see, they said Dr. Small said that in an interview that Malcolm was a Mason. He came directly from prison to the nation. He just wanted to know, was Malcolm actually a Mason or not?
Well, you're asking me to cross borders now. We know there's some things we can't talk about. We know that in the nation, Masonry had a role. And let people do that research.
Okay.
And then you'll see that role. And they were not proclaiming as you and I can proclaim today, because it wasn't their time and their place to proclaim where they were getting their wisdom and what they were doing going forward. People don't understand, the sun is the sun no matter where it shines. Now listen to me real well.
Yeah.
The knowledge that governs the universe and its level of perfection is universally unchanged. What institution you use to tap into that body of knowledge may vary. One may say, well, I've used Islam to tap into it. Yes, you can. One may say, I've used Christianity to tap into it. Yes, you can. One may say, I've used Freemasonry to tap into it. Yes, you can. One may say, I've used Zen Buddhism to tap into it. Yes, you can. One may say, I've used the Japanese, the Shinto, it's the same body of knowledge we are talking about. But when we're talking about Freemason, we are talking about a design of how to use the body of knowledge in a learning process that comes right up out of Africa. I put one a few years ago. I did a lecture, 400 slides. It's called Freemasonry, Africa's Black Child. And in there, I showed pharaohs giving each of the degrees. In there, I showed the pharaohs wearing the apron. In there, I showed them in the shrine. In there, I showed that the two pillows stood before every temple.
So why is it so hard for us to believe that the essence of Freemasonry belong to us? And then we expect other people, we go to other people to say, well, would you recognize me as such when that belongs to us? Why is that so hard to see?
Because we don't study history, because only history will erase the mystery. If you really study history, it doesn't take much to see it. It's everywhere. When we look at, but it depends on who's making the interpretation. For instance, you've seen the picture of the mother and child in ancient Egypt, right?
Yes.
You've seen Isis or Set sitting with Heru sitting on her lap.
Yes.
And she's got something look like a bench on her head.
Mm-hmm.
How do Brother Small interprets that? The mother, when that boy is sitting on the mother, he's sitting on the throne. That is the throne, the lap of the mother, okay? He's sitting on the throne.
Right.
The symbol on her head is the throne. She is the power. She grants to the male child the authority, but she's the power. So how do we begin to understand when we see a picture? Let me recite something out of the pyramid text and then explain it.
Okay.
Because I know some of your background and you've had some of this knowledge in different ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the pyramid text, there's a piece that was translated by Theophila Banga out of Congo, Brazzaville. And God says, I created myself out of myself. And when I realized I created myself out of myself, I caused existence to exist so that existing might exist. And when I realized I was in existence, ma'at, truth, justice, righteousness, harmony, balance, and reciprocity was at my side. This is Amen now speaking. And he says, I cough up shoot the air. And then I spat out shoot the air, and then I coughed up tefnut, the gases and the mixtures in the air. And they gave birth to Geb, or to Nut, the sky, the elements that makes up our bodies are the same elements that make up everything else in the universe.
Right.
And then they also gave birth to Geb, which is the earth. The minerals in the earth comes from those elements. We eat vegetables, we're eating dirt. All the vegetable we eat grew up out of the minerals of the dirt, but we never think of it like that, right? And but yet we are now ingesting all of the substance of the universe itself. And this is in an ancient African book, older than any other book that you know. It's called the Pyramid Text. And then God goes on and says, you know, I created everything my heart. Well, he goes on and talks about the creation of man. Once he created Geb and Nut, and then he talks about the creating of Asar, Set, and Nephthys, and the brother, Asar's brother. But what happens is this becomes the Genesis story in all holy books that we know. This becomes the Adam and Eve story that we know, but this is an African story, tens of thousands of years old, chiseled in stone. Okay? History erases the mystery. We got to study. You know, we've got to study. Stolen Legacy. I don't know how many brothers, I'm still some of you have read it. It's an extraordinary document to help us understand. Dr. Ben, who was a difficult one to read, Black Man of the Nile and his family and his multiple other works, opens up this door to us. But almost many of the European early Egyptian scholars proclaim it all African. It's only the modern mind controllers want to pretend they don't see what they see. But I'm not worried about what they see. What do we see?
Absolutely, absolutely.
What do we see? And so knowledge, history is essentially important to understand. And Egypt is not our oldest civilization. It probably wasn't even our best. It was just the most well-preserved of all of our civilizations. And thank God for that, because that body of knowledge is there. And as God is saying in this piece, he says, and I created all that my heart desired. And then I expanded in it, meaning I, God, am in everything. Okay. And then at the end, he says, and I came from my mother, Nun, which the ancients call the black primordial water, but a quantum physicist today would call liquid matter. So we have to understand that we're talking about an understanding of how the universe works, an understanding of how nature works, an understanding how the human body works in relationship to nature and universe. That's what we're talking about. And if that be the case, then we need to come back to center, because it's that body of knowledge that's going to make us a better man and a better woman and a better family and a better neighborhood and a better community, because it's replication, replication, replication.
So earlier you spoke about being initiated into another particular rite.
Yes.
What rite was that?
It's simply referred to as the craft of Amun Ra. And it's practiced all over Africa. But you know, when we look at something, say, let me give you a good example. If you went to Ghana with me, we would go to Kumasi and we would visit, for instance, the Santahini. That's the king of the Ashanti nation. Well, that Santahini is the pharaoh. They are practicing a body of knowledge on how to construct a society so that it lasts. Now, we lost because of the physical invasion of an enemy who showed up in Africa with a weapon called a gun that we didn't have. And we've taken a whipping in the last 600 years.
So why is it so hard to believe here in America, most Masons only think of 33 degrees when we know, most of us know that
the cycle in the craft is 360.
Correct.
Cycle in the craft is 360.
But why is it so hard for others to believe that it's more than 33 degrees?
Because we've gotten most of our body of knowledge via the Anglo-Saxon German coming out of the UK, or what we call England. And that's his comprehension. You and I both know that I only need 3 degrees, and there was initially in their system only 2. With 3 degrees, I don't need anything above that to walk into any lodge anywhere in the world. And I do it all the time. But we can take all the ceremonial degrees and the explanatory degrees that goes up to the 32nd and 33rd. But the body of knowledge that we should be learning in 1, 2, and 3, which we don't learn. When we look at these books, and we look at these books that we're supposed to master, you know, we don't master them because we don't understand what practice is. That you must learn to practice. It must become a behavior, what we're talking about. And we haven't really, we do ceremony and then walk right back into the world we were in before we encountered the ceremony. We're not being transformed by the body of wisdom. And there must be an institution that can hold you accountable to the transformative process. That you can't move to this degree until your action demonstrated transformation as a result of the learning of the past degree. And I don't see us doing that anymore. And in the West, and I'm gonna have to say, I say it wherever I speak. The European don't have the capacity to contain above 33. He doesn't have the capacity to contain 3. Now, here's what I'm saying. I'm not trying to be negative.
Right.
The capacity.
I've actually heard that. I've actually heard that. When I was with the minister, he actually broke that down to those that was at his home in regards to what you're saying. So go right ahead.
Yes. So if you're in nature a mutation off of a stock, that is an authenticity, meaning the African. When the universe first decided to manifest an aspect of itself as a human, of what we're now calling a human, that aspect was a Black woman. Everything else comes from her. That means if you're at that extreme position they're calling white, it means you have mutated off of the original gene. To such a degree, your deficiency don't allow you to even genetically compete with the Black element. So if you're genetically deficient, then you're spiritually deficient, you're intellectually deficient. So you must then create supplements for yourself. A telephone is a supplement. There was a time we didn't need a telephone, but someone understood the function and created a supplement because we gave them the body of knowledge to understand the function. Look at the technology in North America alone that the African American contribute. Take it out of the picture and we're back in the dark ages in North America. Take all of the African American technological inventions over the last 200 years out of North America and tell me where North America will be. But because when we do the technology, we don't have the capital because of the tyranny of slavery to develop the technology. Somebody else like an Edison or this one or IBM, they developed the technology that came from your mind. You think it's theirs and it's not. And we're still being used in that way. Now we get a fistful of dollars and a nice home in the suburb and a chauffeur to drive us to work. And we think we've made a great accomplishment. But we have to understand what's going on here. We are the lifeblood of this planet via our minds, but we are unaware of it because we have not shackled ourselves to our identity.
So Brother James, just to ask you a question really quickly, not to cut you, but could you argue the same point is being used with Freemasonry, how we basically created this system and we don't recognize that it's actually ours in the same manner?
Absolutely. And the fear of owning it outside of the secret quarters. Now there's some. When I presented that tape, I told you the PowerPoint piece, it was 400 and something slides. I'd come into Prince Hall. Let me take you back and just, in 1980, I returned to New York from Boston. That's when I moved away from the mosque because I was looking for something more, because something happened in Mecca that opened some doors to me, you know. In Mecca, I had some difficult experience. The Saudis turned me over to the CIA. I escaped from the CIA.
Jeez.
And I went down and hid down in Mecca for 3 weeks. When they finally catches me, they thought it was a bit, this is nobody ever did that before.
Jeez.
You know?
Okay.
But I was broke and sitting in Mecca, hungry, suffering from malaria on a curb, thinking I would die. And I would be one of those bodies you saw being carried around the Kaaba on a whiteboard. And my only anguish was, would my family ever know? When a man walked up to me, and I don't know till this day whether it was a human being or what we call an angel. He walked up to me and he spoke to me in a language I didn't understand. I had given up. By that time, I thought I'm gonna just die here. The Saudis wouldn't let me out of the country. The Americans was happy just to see me die. They weren't even gonna bother me anymore because I'd encountered them and they treated me very courteous. And the man spoke Yoruba. When I says, "Mister, I do not speak a language except English and a little Arabic," he said, "Oh, I speak English." And he wasn't in Hajj clothing, and we were past the Hajj. I'm 2 weeks past the Hajj now, but people are still wearing white. He was in a full Nigerian buba.
Mm.
And I told him my situation. He says, come with me, I will help you. And that man got me out of the country and bought me an airline ticket. And I got home and was able to go to the doctor and go to the hospital. And I said, you know what? God just gave me a message there. So I'm gonna walk and see what this other thing is about. Never saw the man again.
Mm.
Don't know if he was a real man in that sense. Because once he got me that ticket and got me to give up my passport, he walked out of that office and I never seen him no more. And in 2 days, I was back home.
Wow.
So there are things that can happen to you in the world if you're searching for this truth, and some can take you right to the edges. But what I was seemed to have sent on a journey, I'll give you another piece. And I'm gonna just put this out there in the open. When I got back to Boston, I was still very, very sick. And so Malcolm's sister, Ella, called the physician into the house. I was laying on the floor by the stove. And Ella and my number 3 daughter, Chamonix, was in a chair. My wife and the other kids was in New York. Brother Albert was there from Nigeria. And I died on that floor. I died. I can hear the doctor pronounce me dead. I can see Ella and my daughter and them crying and Brother Albert crying. And I'm trying to scream to them, I'm not dead.
Uh-huh.
But they said I was dead. And 3 people came up out of my body. If you don't mind me saying, I'm gonna just put it out there.
Put it out there.
Okay. This is a long time ago. This is
Right.
1975. I'm laying there on the floor by the stove, pronounced dead. And a brown man, brown like me, came out of me and he was perfectly formed. And then a silver man came out of me and he looked just like me and he was perfectly formed. And then a green man came out of me, but he was kind of deformed. And then a voice asked something of me, that if I would do the something, I could come back. And I agreed. And when I started moaning and crying, everybody ran over to the stove and realized I wasn't dead.
Mm.
I've never put that really, I've told a few people before, I've never put that really out in the world because people think he's making up stuff, right?
Well,
They
you
don't
know what?
understand.
It's out here now.
You know,
It's
So-
definitely out here.
This is Brother Baron Reynolds, if I may say,
What did I
I've
ask you?
watched countless numbers of interviews with you, and I've never ever heard you tell that story. And I'm just a little bit curious. Spiritually, whatever your interpretation is of spirit, what compelled you to tell that story tonight?
Because when I started calling for the young men of Masonry about 2 months ago to take responsibility, here you are.
Wow.
I was on Brother Rich's show. And then I
Wow.
found out that that show was so watched. I got so many phone calls. I go, wow.
Mhm.
So I did a second show on it because I know that we already have an institution in place. We don't have to invent it. We don't have to start it anew. We've got an institution in place that can get the guns off of our children's hand, that can stop the killing in the community, that can make sure our children, when they come out of high school, they can read and write and do math and be available for employment in the world, that we can build families that are ethically and moral. We have to come back and use the tool the ancestors gave us. Now, maybe when they were putting the tools together, they were so hurt and damaged, they couldn't perfect it for us. But damn it, we've got the tool. Let us perfect it, your generation. I'm 76 years old. How much longer this body will linger? So you have the responsibility. So feeling your spirit over this medium, I told you a story. It's hard to tell somebody that story because people don't really believe God is real.
Oh no, God is real. Isn't that one of the first attributes for us who are part of this craft is to submit, is to say,
Absolutely.
yes, there is a supreme being by whatever name you choose to call it.
Absolutely.
So in knowing that, it's in my own battles, in my own struggles, and trying to formulate or to build bridges, I come across brothers who don't quite get that, who don't quite understand that masonry is bigger than where they at. I keep saying, I've been saying this for years. No matter where you go, if you practice the essence of Freemasonry, it doesn't matter about your jurisdiction. It matters about how you carry yourself as that man who proclaims to be a Mason, someone who has the ability to travel outside of the particular boundaries or jurisdictions for which they was raised in. When you are able to do that, then everything else is at your fingertips. And it's hard for me to believe right here today that so many of our so-called grand masters are not able to harness that power that they do have over the craft and build those bridges.
But let me tell you one of the reasons. They don't truly know that God is real.
Amen.
Put it just straight like that. So I tried to find a way to break it down to people. Years ago, I started saying, and people ran me out of their places when I was speaking. I was saying, I'm God having a human experience. They go, you know, blah, 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 blah. We ain't bringing you back here no more. But think of it. You are the divine having your peculiar experience. So I broke it down palatably. Each of us, as is everything that lives, is an expression of an aspect of the divine essence having the human experience. In that, you contain the totality of the potential of the divine, because you are the light of the world. The story of Christ was a metaphor for any man, any woman. It's a metaphor. When he's sitting there at the Last Supper with the sun rays coming from his head, he's got 12 people around him, but there's 4 clusters of 3s. None of them, there's only 3 talking to that 3, this 3 is talking to this 3, this 3 talking to this. That's the 4 seasons in the 12-month rotating around the sun. The whole stuff is a solar drama explanation. But the solar drama, you are the sun. You know, you and I can come together, my brother, and you begin to enlighten me. So you are the sun. I take the knowledge that you've given to me and reflect it onto others. I have become your moon, you see.
Mm-hmm.
And now when I then take that body of knowledge and give it to someone else, I become the sun. And those who take that knowledge and reflect the light of that knowledge has become the moon. We're talking about the universe here.
Whoa, yes, absolutely.
And that's the body of knowledge that our people created as their sociology, their culture. That's what got attacked. Our physical bodies, they are going to die and come and go. Yes, but what they shattered was the African consciousness. And what your job is to rebirth that consciousness, because African consciousness is the universal consciousness. Freemasonry was a way to teach and instruct that universal consciousness into mankind in a control matter, in a control medium that you can carry out intergenerationally. And this fear is because if one truly knows the divine, then there's nothing to fear called death, because death does not exist.
Now hold on just a second, back up, because a lot of people need to hear that because they don't quite understand exactly what you just said. A lot of people, that went over a lot of people's heads. So you're gonna have to repeat that.
Yes, sir. Death does not exist. You, my brother, when your mother and father gave birth to you, they gave birth to themselves.
I said that the other day. I said it's the God gene. I call it the God gene. I'm the essence of everything that has been passed down. I'm it.
From the first time God decided to be human, you contain the total experience coming down your line. Do you understand that? You are that same person that was created in the beginning. In ancient Egypt, they call it the Wahemi Wasu, the repetition of the first occasion of the first birth. Each time we give birth, we repeat the first occasion. You are not only the totality of your mother and father, you're the totality of your 4 grandparents, you're the totality of your 8 great parents, you're the totality of your 16 great parents, you're the totality of your 32 great parents, you're the totality of your 64 great, going back to infinity. So how can you die when you're the same person that have always lived?
Wow. That's deep. That's deep.
No
right
one
there.
can disprove that science. Tell them break out all the science they got. You can't mess with that. When we look at the 99 pearls of faith, for some of you who have Islamic background, if you don't look it up, I'm Hajj Amin Shahid, the faithful witness. Okay. Amin, the faithful. I don't have an Abdul. I'm the faithful witness. That means I have an aspect of my character, like you each have an aspect of your character that is contained of one of the attributes of the divine itself. Your job is to figure that out and develop that and grow it like a flower and make it bloom. That's how you become the light of the world. But people are afraid to think that you can be that. They've made us afraid by threatening us with death. But if what I just said is true, then death is not possible, is it?
Absolutely. Because you say that because in my own life experience, I seen a picture of my grandfather. And it scared me because I looked at it and I said, that's me.
That is you.
And I started sharing it with my kids. My kids said, Dad, where'd you get that filter from? I was rolling. I was like, that's not a filter. That's your grandfather.
No,
so
here's how you say it the next time, Baba. You says, that was me before this time.
Whoa. Okay.
That was you before this time. When we think of our grandparents, that's you before this time. Okay. And with each time, you should expand and transform. What Masonry as an institution should do is train you in the process of transformation and growth. See? Right now, we've allowed ourselves to be reduced to rituals on how to run a meeting.
Pretty much.
Yes. And we say we're communicating. What are we communicating?
Please mute yourself. Mute yourself, please.
So let me try to come back to what our science is about. And Masonry is a science. It is one of the highest science here. And we did get our modeling in recent times out of England. Can you hear me? Okay. And that's fine, because they had cut us off from our body of knowledge coming out of Africa once they brought us here.
Right.
But even then, we had retained in our subconscious the body of knowledge, Africa. That's why we were able to use Masonry so well. If you read David Walker's appeal, right? Now, David Walker's a young brother. He's a Prince Hall brother. Yes, he was. And he's writing an appeal to Black people to rebel shortly before the Civil War. He was assassinated. Somebody poisoned him. But in his appeal, he raises Egypt. How was David Walker to know about Egypt? What was that discussion about? If we begin to really understand when something said we're going to make a good man better. How do we make a good man better? When you ask, where did you first become a Mason? You said, in my heart. My heart is supposed to be what? The seat of my very soul.
Yes.
And if you go back to ancient Egypt, the scales of justice is doing what? Weighing the deeds recorded in the heart against the standards of evil. So we need to study so we can get the thing right. We want to make the man what the universe, God, the divine, whatever we call it, intended for the man to be. And there's something that has frightened us into not wanting to transform. So we got brothers that know the knowledge, now they can pop it off, but have they transformed their character by the knowledge?
What makes some so afraid of transforming? I mean, because if it's there, because a lot of Masons treat this thing like a club. And I keep telling individuals, and I tell brothers, this is not a club. If you take the essence of Freemasonry, it can really do what it's supposed to do. It can really transform. But what happens is those who are in leadership tend not to do that. That's what I see.
Because of the socialization process that they come out of, the Western notion of Christianity, where death is this frightening tool, and where you're required to believe without facts or scientific support on your belief system, must be altered, you know? And that's why sometimes, and I remember hearing Malcolm in the early days and many other teachers in the nation teaching from the Bible. And I used to wonder, why aren't they teaching from the Quran? And people made an assumption they didn't know the Quran, but they knew the Quran very well. But they were not dealing with a society that knew the Quran. So they had to take the book that the people knew and teach the people out of it, right? And it worked. But we're not paying attention to our teachers so we can learn from them. That's what I'm saying. History will erase the mysteries. You see, study your great teachers. What was the great success models they were using? How were they using that success model? We came out of slavery technically in 1865. We know it didn't end there. It didn't end really. It hasn't ended yet, really.
Right.
But the greatest victory we had was probably 1965, you know? But in 1865, between 1865 and the crash of the stock market in 1929, people who could not read, could not write, who had been enslaved for 100 and plus years, almost 200 years, stepped out of that bondage, and by that point had opened 52 banks, 75 insurance companies, more than 1,000 credit unions, and thousands of schools. What was it that allowed them to do that? It was that thing of Africa that they kept hidden inside. And when the opportunity came to use it, they did. And the opportunity and the organization that most facilitated it was Prince Hall Freemason.
So do you think that we've become too Americanized now?
I think we have lost a knowledge of history. Our ancestors had a knowledge of history. My grandmother's the one that told me we from Africa. She didn't read or write. She was a root woman on a plantation in South Carolina, but she knew she was from Africa. Because she said her pa came from there, her father. And that generation knew enough to give us, the generation that followed them, the tools to help us. But we've lost the body of knowledge. We don't even study the history of African Americans. How can we even expect to know ancient African traditions and history when we don't know the basic African American history? And everyone give Malcolm X credit for founding an organization called the O.A.A.U, right? But that's not true at all. 1892, T. Thomas Fortune founded the Afro-American League, okay, in upstate New York. So, you know, T. Thomas Fortune and the Afro-American League, guess who was in there? Booker T. Washington, W.B. Du Bois, Ida B. Wells, and others. They morphed into the Niagara movement. The Niagara movement morphs into the NAACP. The NAACP wasn't started by white people. The mistake they made when they formed the NAACP was to partner with some white people.
Isn't that what we always do?
That's what we always do.
It's like we can't have our own.
Let me give you something sweet to think, to suck on. We always think that the white folks put the money behind the
You never-
NACP.
Right.
They put some money in, but guess who was the primary finances of the NACP? And its largest yearly contribution went to the NAACP.
Was that the Freemasons?
Prince Hall Freemasons.
All right.
You understand the implications of that?
Absolutely. But,
'Cause it's gonna
the thing
change.
is,
It's going to change our whole perception on what the NACP was able to do legally to transform so much in this country when you understand that it wasn't the Jews. It wasn't, they were in there trying to get control, but it was Prince Hall Freemasonry. And this book, which is called, if you can see it,
right.
Black Freemasonry by a white woman. She's a member of the French Lodge. They accept women in full Masonic space in the French Lodge.
Right.
And she's done a wonderful research.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to get this book.
Okay.
You need to get that book. And I think you will find a lot of good details that will help you understand what, because if we don't know our basic, most recent history, you can go and run around Egypt all day and climb the pyramids all you want. You won't even understand what you're doing.
Mm.
You've got to understand who Drew Ali was.
Right.
Who was the noble Drew Ali? What was the statement he was trying to make? We hear of the Baha'i movement in this country. Most people don't know the Baha'i started out as a Black Shia movement led by a Turkish gentleman, Baha'u'llah, in 1910 in New York City. Now it's morphed into some interracial thing, whatever. But history will tell you its genesis.
Mm.
So you can begin to understand the impact we have in constantly trying to find a way to bring this knowledge to our people in so many different forms. The most successful one has been Prince Hall and the Nation of Islam.
Mm-hmm.
I must give credit to the Black church, but it doesn't bring the knowledge, but it brings a continuity of how the knowledge gets used.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere along this path, you're going to encounter the Odd Fellows, the Knights of Pythias, the Daughters of Ten, the Daughters of Ruth, the Daughters of Isis. All these organizations that are spin-offs of Freemasonry that helped our communities to survive, especially in the 1900s and the 20th century.
Mm.
But the father of all of this is Masonry. And Masonry, if you follow the steps of the Knight Templar, has a genesis in Africa. And any temple you go in that has a salt in terms of aesthetic is styled as an Egyptian temple. So why am I going to style a British organization as an Egyptian temple with the ideogram of the winged figure and the sun disk over my door if it has nothing to do with Egypt? What is that all about?
But that's the thing I keep coming back to in meeting various brothers and trying to break that down and let them know that this thing that we practice, this thing that we enjoy being part of is us.
It's our thing.
But with so many different jurisdictions within the construct of Freemason, with so many people not getting the right instructions in Freemasonry, this is what you get. So you have people in leadership that do not force the issue of saying or taking on and saying this is what we can do with this very thing we call Freemasonry. Because you and I both know, and some of those who are watching tonight know very well, our counterparts or those who are the occasion, they do exactly that. They take that and they use it and they build with it. They do exactly that. And
America is the best model of what white people can do with Freemasonry.
But it seems so hard that we can't do this. It is not. I'm getting kind of frustrated.
Because we don't see it as ourselves, you see. I am the divine manifest. I am this body of knowledge, but I must learn and absorb it.
Right.
It must then transform me in that absorption. That means practice. When we talk about practicing what you preach, it means practice. When we talk about giving charity, that's got to be real. The more you know, the greater servant you must be to those who don't know. The more you know, the greater servant you must be to those who don't know. But we get in this thing, which is a European thing, that the more we know, the greater distance we put between us and those who don't know.
Mm.
Well, you only have the wisdom to serve those who are in need of the fruits of the wisdom. We're gonna go home and hide it in your closet? You know?
Some do.
Some do, in books and other things.
Yes.
But any good priest, and those of us who rise in Freemasonry, we are the priest of the craft.
Stop right there. When you say that we are the priest of the craft, you want to linger on that a little bit more?
Yes.
Please.
The craft is that body of knowledge that we are holding so secret. The craft is that body of knowledge that tells us about the totality of the universe, the totality of creation being God itself. That there's only God. In Ghana, they call it Jinyami. None but God exists. So if nothing but God exists, what the hell are we? We are only aspect of its existence. Let me do that again, because I want people to grab this. See, because if you don't really grasp this, you're not going to get the rest of the stuff I'm talking about. You're going to small just some crazy dude saying stuff, right? If God is omnipotent, omnipotent, and supreme, then nothing could exist but it. So what is the rest of it? Aspects.
Ooh, that's a gem.
We're like
that's a gem.
cells. We're like cells in the body God. You understand? And we know through the cloning process, each cell contains the totality of the body in which it's inhabited. So I don't want to scare people and think, I'm not saying you, but no, none of us is the divine in its totality, but all of us represent an aspect of that divine without which it cannot exist as divine.
Mm.
And that's taking it a little step further. So coming back, if we want to see Masonry grow, we got the knowledge. And you got the knowledge to know, and anybody in Masonry, especially somebody who says I'm 32nd degree, they know this didn't start in England. Stop it.
I don't know, because I ran across some.
Oh, okay, let me tell you about when I first showed, when I came into Prince Hall, right?
Right.
I came in, I was raised by Prince Hall to the 3rd degree for the craft.
Uh-huh.
The other craft.
Got you.
Because they recognized Prince Hall.
Uh-huh.
And so I was raised there. Then I got discouraged and went deeply into the Yoruba tradition and the Akan tradition and the Voodoo tradition. And then I realized that all of them was the same tradition as Prince Hall. I go, so, you know that thing story, you go from home and you go all the way around the world to stand up back home, okay?
Yeah.
And so my 2 sons joined the lodge. And my cousin who took them in for me, Brother Herbie, got sick after the 2nd year, passed away suddenly from cancer. So I said, I'm not leaving my boys to be trained by strangers. So I wrote a letter to their worshipful master who told me I had to write the Grand Master. I wrote a letter to the Grand Master. He set up a meeting. Of course, by then I was kind of well known. So the Sanhedrin wanted to meet with me. Y'all know who the Sanhedrin are. The Sanhedrin is a bunch of past masters who didn't want me there. So
I know why. I know why they didn't want you there, but go ahead.
Why do you want to come? I said, I'm in search of knowledge, you know? And he said, no, we don't know. We want to know why you want to come. I said, well, I want you to help me make a good man better. Of course, you know, they went off on me. And we went for this, and we know who you are. And so they said, well, you can't take our truth and give it away freely. And I wanted to know which one of y'all own which truth and write it down for me, and then I won't. So the Grand was a beautiful man. He stepped in, Brother Holly. He's an ancestor now, and stopped it. And he said, I'm bringing him into the Grand Lodge, and all lodge must be presented at his raising. And I did the 3 degrees in one night, every ritual. I could barely walk when I got to the last one, and the Grand gave me a chair. And so I came back into the lodge, and I wanted to be in my children's lodge Cornerstone 37. And so some of the young brothers wanted me to be on the education committee. So we went to visit them and they turned me down and said, you know, you're trying to make everything Black, everything African, da, 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 da. They would not let me join the education committee.
But it's true though.
And let me tell you how we resolved that. The brothers asked me to give a lecture. And initially it was supposed to have been just for the lodge. But somehow the word got out into the Harlem community that I'm lecturing at Prince Hall Grand Lodge. So we're in communication and somebody came and said we had to end the communication because there was 200 people standing in the lobby because they heard that Brother Small was going to get his lecture. So they had to now close all the communication and we assembled in the main sanctuary. And I gave the lecture knowing I had to, you know, hold certain things back because some of this was general public, but I was able to put some stuff out. The head of the education committee came and sat on the stage beside me. Boy, I'm gonna sit right here. I'm gonna see what you're talking about. Well, 30 minutes into, the tears started rolling down his face. I presented the proof of who we are. And I'm gonna send a copy of that PowerPoint to you, my brother.
Okay, I appreciate it.
It still can use some work, but that's what you young people do. You further the research, but I'll send you the work that I've done and you can look at it. It's almost 400 slides.
Right.
Like the whole sweep of history coming down to the Pharaoh. And then I'll show you. And the last slide is what will blow your mind. Because the last slide is from the Great Pyramids in Central America, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the gentleman is standing holding the skull and bones and wearing the Masonic apron.
Wow.
This is before Columbus. So see, this thing is bigger, way bigger than England. England sought to capture it. I'll send you what little work I've done. And you all do the research. You got the technology now to do this research.
Mm-hmm.
But that brother, my elder brother who I love, who had rejected me coming in that committee, apologized to me that night. Because I showed them that this is yours. It comes from you. I showed them the pharaohs in the first degree. I showed them the pharaohs in the second degree. I showed them the pharaohs in a third degree.
Right.
I showed them the pharaohs, including King Tut, wearing the apron. And multiple different aprons.
Multiple different aprons?
Yeah, because there's degrees and there's degrees. When I send you what I have, give me a few days to put it together and let one of my sons help me with the technology and I'll get it to you because it's a PowerPoint presentation. And the point is though, let's look at Freemasonry like a university because that's what we're really talking about here. It's a university that contains a body of knowledge. That's why they call it degrees. I got a bachelor's degree. I got a master's degree. I've got a PhD degree. So there's no, when we talking about degrees, we're talking about the same degrees. You understand? Mm-hmm. And I have mastered a particular body of science, of knowledge, and I have been acknowledged having done so. So now I'm authorized to teach this. The priest is the teachers of society. Priest is the teachers of society. And we confusing the preacher of the day with the priest of yesterday. No, the priest of yesteryear were the scientists, they were the instructors of society in a collaborative brotherhood. All right?
So with that being said, well, how did this thing that we call our stonemasons get involved with this? Because what I'm hearing you say as far as the priest in the sciences coming together in order to form and shape what we know today as masonry, then how did this legend of stonemasons, or we're going into the quarries to do this?
Here's how you ask the fundamental question. How does Europe come from building huts to stone cathedral in one generation? Where did the knowledge come from? One generation you're building shacks and huts, and the next generation you're building stone cathedrals all over the place. What's going on? Did you come into a new body of knowledge? Well, where did you get the body of knowledge from? You certainly didn't have enough time to evolve that knowledge.
Right.
Okay. So where did the body of knowledge come? And the body of knowledge doesn't appear in Europe until the return of Knights Templars and the body that people don't talk about, Knights Hospitallers. Do you know who the Knights Hospitallers are?
I do. I
And
do.
so we tend not to realize the power that the Knights Hospitallers had, which was greater than, that's why when they challenged the Knights Templars, they didn't challenge the Knights Hospitallers. They gave them the whole island of Malta for their own.
They did.
It says, I'm the Knights of Malta.
Yep.
But nobody know the history or the genesis. Because when certain groups found out that those who we call the Templars had come upon a body of knowledge that they didn't have access to, they sent another group in, and the Hospitallers showed up on the scene. But then there was another body. People don't understand Islam. We got caught into just praying now. We spend a whole day praying and accomplishing nothing. You know? But,
get up off your knees.
yes. But Islam challenges the Hospitallers,
Uh-huh.
and it challenged the Templars, and I forgot the German group, the third one, and take, they like to say, the Holy Land.
Mhm.
But what made the land holy was the body of knowledge that was contained in its institutions and its libraries.
Right.
Okay, that's what makes it holy. The wisdom, the knowledge. But then once Islam takes it back, even Salahuddin is not African. Salahuddin is a Serb who was one of the Slavic peoples who had been brought as slaves to Egypt by the Mamelukes and the Seljuk Turks, who had taken over the system of Islam from its initial inheritors, who were the followers of the Prophet Muhammad. We need to understand that history. We talk about Islam, we don't even understand that history. That even the Shia who we put down were the ones who was given the sanctuary and protection to the family of the Prophet, while the ones we call the Sunnis was trying to kill him. So let's have that discussion. If people want to have a discussion, you know, but history will erase the mystery, see, and let you see some stuff that got curves on it. You can see around the corner with history, see, but you can't see it.
I like how you say history will remove the mystery.
Absolutely.
And a lot of us don't like to study our history, but others like to study us, you know. So you have to go and look at, I often say we'll become too comfortable with our open enemy.
Well, the key is we are killing more of our own people in any given year than died in any given year of slavery. Okay. We're allowing for more of our children, particularly the boy children, to spend an entire lifetime on earth in and out of the penal system and the slave markets called the penitentiaries of America. We're allowing our daughters to be turned into whores and considered the whorish nature and behavior of European feminine culture as normal. And we ask, why aren't we doing more with Masonry to turn this thing around? No one else is going to stop the actions of the sick mind that has become the African American in a large way. Not all of us. Some of us have maintained with minimal disease. All of us are diseased, but some have minimal disease. But there's some that has very acute disease, and that acute sick element is killing the rest of us who are trying to be healthy.
Right.
And so we have to admit the truth about what's going on in the Black community. When we talk about economic politics and culture, you can't separate your reality from your spirituality because they're the same things. Okay? Spirituality is not religion. Religion is a tool of spirituality when used appropriately. So you have to be able to understand that your reality and your spirituality is the same thing. You know, and so that means you must talk about providing food, clothing, shelter, safety, and security as a spiritual phenomenon. And you can only provide food, clothing, shelter, safety, and security for your family if you control the economic, politics, and culture where you live. And you can only control the economic, politics, and culture if you get control of land, labor, and resources. You're not going to do any of this if you don't have a knowledge of self. Now, does that sound familiar, people?
Although it may sound familiar, it's truth. You can spit that all day. It doesn't change the fact that it's truth.
Yes. And so when we talk about Masonry, it is one of the organizations we have fully intact. We don't have to build it. We don't have to imagine it. We have to reimagine how to use it. But we got it. The body of knowledge is there on how to be a brotherhood, you know? Matter of fact, you know, the first thing I do if I was the Grand Master, I would close every social club in every temple. No bar, no liquor ever served.
Right.
Close it down. You come to temple to learn. You come to temple to practice the brothership. You come to temple to get knowledge, not go downstairs and get drunk after community. So close them all. No more bars allowed in the temple. I know that's gonna make half your members leave, but
no, I mean, it depends on what you want. If you want to drink, then go to the clubs and drink. But if you truly want to enlighten yourself,
if you're coming in the temple should not be a place of filth.
Correct.
Okay. And so we have to really be clear. That would just be the first step as a sign that we're serious about transforming this man.
Correct.
To make him a father, a brother, a husband, a friend, to make him a community builder, to make him a family builder and a nation builder. If you're not, you know, we can laugh at the Jews and accuse them of everything, but look how well they do what they do to keep their family intact.
I like that. Look how well they do what they do. That's beautiful.
And at the core of their thing is their history. Their history is their religion. That's the core of their being. A love for self. Whether that self is a falsely perceived self or whether it's a real self, they've adopted it.
But why is it that when we begin to teach that same metaphor, that same thing, we'll hit with all sorts of rocks and bricks coming at us when we begin to really push that notion, love of self?
Because there's only one group in the world that can lead it back to God, and it's the African. Matter of fact, there's only one group in the world that desires to lead the world back to God, and that's the African. And that's why you're going to get the pushback, and it's going to get more fierce. The more work you do, the more fierce that enemy is going to come. But if you stand your ground, we will win.
Okay.
We will win.
Because that's definitely been one of my missions. When I do my podcast, when I do this show here, I say that all the time. You know, you have to love yourself. You hurt people, and this is what we're doing to ourselves over and over again. But to actually know who you are and from which you come, when you get there, it's a whole nother thing. When you get there, and some people never get there, and they've been in masonry for years, but they never get to know the true essence from which they come.
Zora Neale Hurston was a most beautiful sister that I encourage all the brothers to read. She said, to be there, you must go there. To be there, you must go there. But to go there, you must know there. To be there is to go there. But to go there, you must know there. In those three sentences, that's an extraordinary instruction. The other that I always tell young brothers, the greatest thing to know is how much you don't know. The greatest thing there is to know is to know how much you don't know.
Speaking of that, You have a book in your office. It's about yay big.
You've been watching me, huh? Where's that book?
Yeah, you need to pull that monster out because I don't think that you can go and just pick that book up from any store.
No, where is it? It's been, I've been doing so many things lately, and I moved it, so. Put it up. Now it's in here. It's a Manly P. Hall.
Yes, it's a very rare Manly P. Hall at that.
Yes, the greatest teaching of all ages. And I don't know where I put it. I was just using it about a month ago. Just give me a minute and I'll see it, and then I'll show people.
Okay.
And that particular document is a listing of all of the world's great secret societies, or societies of secrets. And why are you blocking me here tonight?
You know, I have a smaller version of that particular book. However, I know the one that you have is more extensive. And
Yeah, that's
what
the
it
classic-
presents is
the
it's not
classic
the small
one.
condensed version. The one you got has to be like maybe a foot.
Long, bigger.
It's a huge book.
Yeah. Where is it? Normally my eyes can go directly to where I put anything.
Well, you've been moving around quite a bit of stuff, so we're not going to really pressure you about it.
Yeah, because I've got all kinds of things, but it should be, it's such a big book, it should be like in my face. And it's not. And I don't think I took it out of this room.
So tell me this, what do you think about Albert Pike?
But Pike, you remember, he's a European. He takes our knowledge and uses it for his people. Knowledge is knowledge. You don't care who uses it. It's a very neutral thing. And so Pike, you know, here's a guy who's in the Southern United States. He's a part of the whole racist culture that produced what becomes the Ku Klux Klan. But yet, and he's in many of his writing, and the young lady refers to some of his writings in that book on Black Freemasonry, he doesn't want to bond with us, but he knows who we are, but he's not trying to build us. He's trying to build his people.
Right.
And he can't build his people if he tells his people that the man you're holding in bondage is superior to you.
Teach.
Okay. And so, like so many of the other great, must be something. And as soon as you say teach, I see the book.
All right. Once again, I want to welcome everybody who's on right now, and to everyone who's in the chat, I want to say thank you for tuning in tonight as we have one of our own, Professor James Small. I mean, it's an honor to have him on tonight. So I just want to say, everybody, thank you for coming on.
This is, it's long, and it's about 2 feet.
It's about 2 feet.
Man. I just want to show them one of the, and it talks about all the great sages of Europe were part of Freemasonry. And give a sense when you, this is the book.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Likes that. That's yes, that's one you gotta definitely keep in the library right there.
Yeah. And they did such a fantastic job in trying to use paintings and to express each of the societies of secrets or the secret societies. And all of them are contained within this book.
Hmm.
The
Yes.
great teachings of all ages.
Like I said, I have a small copy, but that one you have right there definitely goes in a lot more detail than the smaller copies.
Yeah, it does. And the artwork is just so fantastic. But again, all it's doing is telling the same story about the same body of knowledge for a different culture. Let's come back to where, when we talk about Freemason, what are we talking about? We're talking about how to build the human character, how to build a good individual who will find, when they find the God in themselves, they'll recognize the God in the mate they'll choose to mate with the creative family. How to define, how to develop, what are the rules, what are the attributes and qualities one must learn to develop a good family. And then that family partner with other families who are using those same quality and attributes to develop themselves. And then those group of families partner with other families and create a neighborhood based on those same principles. And then that neighborhood unite and create a community based on those same common principles. And that community combined with other community bond and create a nation based on those same principles. And that's not unfamiliar.
No, it's not.
Okay. So what we got to do then, though, is let's talk about the quality and attributes. Let's talk about what honesty really is about. Let's talk about what trustworthiness really is about. Let's talk about what intelligence is about, diligence is about, and also talk about what I usually do it because I'm having a thing with one of my sons right now. I got to walk him through because, you know, even we can be out there teaching, but our children go out in the world and drink the cup of poison too, you know, and then they want to bring the poison back home as identity.
Right.
And I got to stop them into doing so that wasn't born in my house, you know? And so, for instance, envy, it's not desire, you know, it gives birth to envy. I desire something, can't have it, so I envy the brother or sister that has it. Well, envy then give birth to jealousy. I'm jealous of the fact that my brother or sister have this thing that I can't have. Jealousy then give birth to hatred. Hatred give birth to violence, and violence give birth to the death of the human character. So when we study these negative quality and attributes and study the positive quality and attributes, we see what our business should be about. It's clear. When I see a child in the street, he's been hurt and abused all of his life. He's a 16-year-old, been in a child care facility since he was 3 years old, being abused and misused by the Catholic Archdiocese or the Protestants, whoever run these institutions all of their lives, dumped back in the street at 18 with no education and no foundation. See, people ain't talking about this. We're talking about tens of thousands of kids every year coming out of the child care facilities that have used them for nothing more than to make money off of them, all right? And have turned them into animals without any human feelings because they've been busy trying to defend themselves from the abuse and misuse for 2 decades sometimes, or a decade and a half. Wow. And now you give them a one-time welfare allowance and a room and tell them to go get a job, and he can't even read. He's done been raped and abused and misused all of his life. Now he's angry. He has no hope. He's full of hate. What do you think he's going to do? What do you think he's going to do? And that's what he's doing. And we're not even asking, where's the source of this? You know, just look in each of your community and look up child care welfare centers, and you'll find there's multiples that's full of Black children that's being abused and at 18 dumped into the street. The girls are given more charity. They're put on welfare and given an apartment allowance and then left to their own designs after having been used by these Christian institutions for most of their lives to raise the millions of dollars they get in tax money to supposedly take care of them. And they can't even give them a decent education, learn how to read and write. And they dump them in the community very quietly every year. And that's a large part of the young people we see killing young people and other people in our streets. They're so broken, they're so injured, they're so hopeless, they're so lost, and they're so angry, and they should be, because we're not paying attention.
So with that being said, as far as Freemasonry is concerned, in what we try to do for the younger brothers who are coming through, how is it that they can break down those barriers that keeps them from expanding? Because you know as well as I do, there are older gentlemen in Masonry. They say, well, you know, young men, you shouldn't do this. And well, you know, young men, you should be quiet and all of that. How is it that they who can actually turn this technology that we have today and expand upon it in such a way in uniting brothers from various jurisdictions and really expanding
That's the key.
building it?
You said expand on the technology. The older generation have been afraid of the technology. We have a younger generation that know how to use the new technology. And you're going to have to tie that technology to the body of knowledge that is Masonry. That's where history comes in. Show your great historical characters. Show Richard Allen. When he broke away from the Methodist Church, what was the implication? What was Absalom Jones' implication? Prince Hall and his brothers, 16 of them, was petitioning the government of Massachusetts to end slavery long before 1865, even before they founded the Free African Lodge. And they didn't call it the Free Negro Lodge, did they? They didn't call it the Free Colored Lodge. They called it the Free African Lodge. And our parent lodge in Massachusetts is still called the Free African Lodge to this day. Now, it was Richard Allen that made the recommendation that the name be changed to Prince Hall after Prince Hall's death. I still historically don't agree with that, but the brothers of that day made that decision. You know, but teach the history so we understand who we are just as Masons. How many of the brothers in Prince Hall Masonry really know the history of Prince Hall? Some say he's from Barbados. He's not from Barbados. Some white folks made that shit up because they couldn't give the African American the authority of having founded this. You know? There's nothing to prove in Barbados except, I forgot the mind of that white writer that wrote the first history of us. But study the history of Prince Hall. What's the first thing they tried to do was to get us free out of slavery. The next thing they did was to get an educational system started. He opened the first school in his own living room. So let's show people what these men did. These were freedom fighters. These were revolutionaries. In their time, in their way, and what they did transform America. Not just us. America would have lost the Revolutionary War had they not pulled us in. It would have lost the Civil War had they not pulled us in. Let's study that history and tell it to our children.
It seems as if every time we go to war for America, it seems like we pull them out of the ship.
Yeah, but we didn't go to war for America. See, that's the key. Each time we went to war with the Americans, we went to war for ourselves. And in going to war for ourselves, we pulled them out of the ship. You know what I'm saying? But that's what happened each time. And so, but we need to know the story. We need to know the story of the Black men and women who fought for the British in the War of 1812, and how the British took them to Trinidad, and the Port of Spain created a whole different community there of free Blacks while they were still holding the other Blacks enslaved. You know? So
how does the shrine play in this? Because I know you've gone over to Africa. So how does Shrinum play into this?
Now, my son is a Shriner. I didn't go into the shrine. I don't need to go in the shrine. I'm a Hajj Amin Shaki.
That says it all, though. But for those, for those small people like myself.
Yeah. So for those who don't, I went before the Rabat Alim El Islamin to be credentialized. Now that is called in the World Muslim League. The Rabat Alim El Islamin is a body that's representative of Muslims from every country in the world. And it was that body of knowledge that referred to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad to me when I walked in that day, how is Hajj Muhammad? I
Mm.
go, Hajj Muhammad? I said, I heard that the Messenger made Umrah. They said, no, Hajj Muhammad. And I
Is
was
that the name that was given to you?
no,
Oh,
they
okay.
were referring to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. They were
Really?
asking me, how was Hajj Muhammad?
Oh, okay, okay. So
And this is the highest Muslim body in the planet Earth.
so let's break this down. So why is it that they want to paint a picture that the Nation of Islam is not considered Islam? It is. Why do they want to paint that brush when you've just told me?
Yeah. Well, all of them don't paint that brush. See, there's some who know better.
Mhm.
The Messenger brought us the best methodology of Islam for us. You go
Right.
to Indonesia, Indonesians don't approach Islam like the Pakistanis. The Pakistanis don't approach Islam like the Saudis.
Right.
So why were we expected to approach Islam like the Saudis? The
Correct.
Messenger brought to us the best methodology for teaching us the body of knowledge called Islam, given the situation we had come out of and were still in. I don't think any other movement, matter of fact, we don't have to think, no other movement has had the impact of the Nation of Islam on the Black community. The problem is because it is so hated by the enemy and even the Black ruling class and their ignorance, we don't know the story. And so that's on the brothers and sisters in the nation to tell that story. And I know they have a lot of good writers that have been writing lately, but you're gonna have to tell the story. Don't hog the messenger. Give the messenger to the people. That's who he belonged to. He didn't come to the few of you who converted. He came when the people he came to, none of them was Muslim when he came.
Somebody said that Farrakhan talks about Jesus more so than Orthodox pastors.
Well, if Jesus is the pathway which you people understand, then you've got to use that.
Boom.
Okay? Because that's what they understand.
Correct.
And Jesus is not a bad tool because Jesus come right up out of Africa. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church is older than the Catholic Church. Certainly by 500 years. It's older than the Protestant Church by 1,000 years. Now, they said, well, the Ethiopian Orthodox Church was given birth to by the Byzantine Church, which was then based in Turkey. Yeah, then Turkey was Black, okay? It had not been invaded yet and changed and transformed. So the Christian church is a Black phenomenon turned white and flipped on his back.
Gotcha.
Okay. So history will erase the mystery. Ethiopia celebrates what is considered to be the oldest new year in the history of the world. I think it's September 11th. It is the birth of Heru to Asar and Aset. It's the birth of Jesus to Joseph and Mary. I mean, like, history will just make you laugh at the foolishness that they have told us. You know, knowledge. There's two things everybody should remember. History will erase the mystery. And Dr. Asa Hilliard taught us that true freedom is to be shackled to your identity. True freedom is to be shackled to your identity. So once you get those two pieces clear, you can move that other stuff out of your way. This body of knowledge called Masonry is the body of knowledge. It is the oldest body of knowledge in the world. It's called by other names in other places, but it's the oldest body of knowledge in the world on how to build the God-man. That's the simplest way to put it. Now, some of the elders may not like what I got to say, but then if you mess with me, I'm gonna pull rank on you because I'm in the craft. And I have
what I want to do right now is for those of us who are on the live Zoom right now, if you got questions, please go ahead and ask your questions if Professor James doesn't mind while I have him here. Anybody?
I know he was about to touch on the shrine-dom, but then I think he kind of.
The shrine. Remember, the shrine goes into Islam, right? Now, we don't understand that sometimes when we're not Muslims, but Medina is the second most sacred city in Islam, right? The Fez is an Islamic phenomenon, not a Moorish phenomenon. It's an Islamic phenomenon in terms of dress code, dress attire. And so when you get into the shrine, because Masonry in its early focus, the way the European presented it, was tied to Christianity. But the heart of the Christian world was taken away from them by whom? The Muslims. So now you got to find a way to tie that in. And that's where the shrine comes in, you know. But I'm not a Shriner. And they do good work, especially in the medical field and in the charitable field that deals with hospital and healthcare. And I got to give them credit for that because they do enormous work across the country.
I'm a Shriner.
Yeah. So you can,
Shriner, and quite a few of us are Shriners. So we can talk about it from a different point of view. But I understood what you said in regards to being raised to the high priest part. And we're going to talk about that offline.
Yeah, there's some things, right, that we, and I will not, people say they hear me talking, but I know my boundaries. There's some boundaries you can't cross. It's this total disrespect to the craft to cross those boundaries.
Correct.
There's some doors you got to crack open because you want people to look in those doors, because if they do, they'll see someplace they want to go.
Mm-hmm.
But Islam is as African as is voodoo. Voodoo is as Islamic as is Mecca.
Mm.
When you go to Mecca, you see a building. At the core of Islam is a black building, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's called what? The Kaaba.
Right.
Where do you see that earlier in African history? In ancient Egypt, in ancient Kemet.
Uh-huh.
You see when they're weighing the soul, you see the Ka and the Ba. The Ka is your spiritual self. The Ba is your genetic self. When your genetic self and your spiritual self comes together and become one, then you're the Kaaba. So people take our knowledge and explain it to themselves in different ways. But that Kaaba in Mecca is not about a building at all. It is about a philosophical protocol that the building symbolizes. And it's odd that they drape it in black.
Mm. Yeah,
But
it is, huh?
But study the so-called Egyptian Book of the Dead, which the African called the Haru, the Book of the Coming Forth by Day and by Night.
Yes.
You will learn the story of the Ka and the Ba. And when the Ka and the Ba unites, it is the divine itself, the divine energy itself.
Okay.
And so, but the key thing is seek knowledge from the cradle to the grave. This is what the Quran teaches, right? Seek knowledge from the cradle to the grave, even to the ends of the earth, even as far as China. At that time, China was thought to be the end of the
earth. Yeah. Anyone else has a question?
Yes.
Brother Barron. Oh,
go for it, Brother Barron.
yeah. I was just gonna say, and I'll try to be just a little bit quick. I'll tell you, this is probably one of the greatest lectures. I've watched a lot of your lectures, and this is the first time I heard you talk on spiritual occurrences that actually have happened to you. And whatever it is, the ancestors, whatever it is, you feel compelled to go ahead and share that. And I find it amazing because I found a little nuance of what you were talking about. You actually slid in there how important the first 3 degrees were. When you said you were laying on that floor and you passed on, there were 3 individuals. The last one that came was actually green and was deformed. You are 76 years old. The 7 + 6 is 13. That's the M. You got 7 6 today that we're here today. 7 + 6, that's the M. So you were actually elaborating and chosen to go ahead and display everything about the Master Mason. So peace and blessings be upon you. This has been a blessing for all of us within Freemasonry. And I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Well, thank you, brothers, because it's your job. Because it isn't even about saving the Black people, right? because we can never be destroyed. This is about saving the world. We are the guardians of the world. No one else can give guardianship to this world. We are the balance on the scale. We are the center pole in the scale. And if we don't assume our position, it will stay imbalanced.
Whoa, I like that. I like that.
We are the restoration of truth and harmony.
Anyone else?
Yes, I have a question. This is Brother Jochannan out of Atlanta. Dr. Smalls, actually, we met long time ago. I was very young. Used to go to First World Alliance lecture series all the time.
Wow. Yeah, that's a long time, brother.
Yes,
that was a good time too.
Yeah. My question is, as you spoke about this, like you say, the sun is the same in China as it is in Africa and any other part of the world. So there's this body of knowledge that is universal. But you speak about how different groups of people express that same body of knowledge. Is it important then for us to understand that body of knowledge that comes out of our cultural paradigm, or does it matter?
It does matter, absolutely. And here's why it matters. Capacity. Everybody don't have the capacity that the African has. We have the ultimate capacity, you see. And one of our problems is that we're trying to express the body of knowledge with the limited capacity of other than ourselves. You understand? And that capacity is not sufficient for ourselves. I hope that makes sense. For the Chinese, they do one thing, and that's cool. But for us to be where we need to be, we got to do something else. Let me see if I can show you so you can see that it's not far-fetched, right? One of the largest Masonic community denseness in terms of population is in Haiti. But they can't get loose because America, Britain, France, everybody got their foot on them. Haiti is one of the richest countries in the Western Hemisphere outside of North America. It has iridium. You know what iridium is?
Yes, sir.
It's the metal from the thing that falls out the sky. And it conducts heat better than anything else on the planet Earth. That's one of the main things they're stealing out of Haiti every day. Haiti has gold, but they don't tell us about that because they're mining the gold. Haiti's oil reserve is second only to Venezuela, but they won't let Haiti drill for oil off of its coast. But the thing that has been holding the Haitian people together has been Freemasonry, Prince Hall Freemasonry. And Freemasonry and Voodoo have a partnership. But because we don't know anything about Voodoo, we think Voodoo is a negative. No, it is not. It's a big old positive if we understand it.
So with that being said, though, how can we, from the various jurisdictions on here, assist and aid, or maybe even reach out and say, okay, how can we bridge that? How can we bridge that gap?
That's exactly what you need to do. Okay. We've got a technology now that would allow you to have a conversation with brothers and sisters in Haiti without going to Haiti.
Right.
You know, it will allow us to have a conversation about unity. See, unity is one of the key aspects of a brotherhood. A brotherhood is about uniting, right? And we are not united. We come from this jurisdiction. We think we got more letters than this one, and that one got less letters. The body of knowledge that is Masonry is universal. I don't care how much letters you got. We deal with the same body of knowledge. So it's that body of knowledge that binds us together as one. And that's what we should celebrate. And we can celebrate Masonry without revealing our secrets. Now, the secret isn't ours just for the sake of having secrets. we know that you must learn things in degrees. The way a child learns to walk, the way a child learns to speak, everything comes in degrees. The way the mind develops, it develops in degrees. So we have a right to have a secret, you see, so that you will learn those degrees after you have mastered degrees before. And so I don't apologize for that to anybody. But there are things we can do that don't reveal our secrets, right? But that we could celebrate every year, like the camps for the children. Instead of just one jurisdiction doing their little thing, maybe we can have 4 or 5 states doing something together for our children. You know, the things we do during the year for the elder to feed them, doing Thanksgiving, doing Christmas, and giving out turkeys and other food products and warm coats and that. People don't know we do these things.
Mm-hmm.
They don't even advertise what we do. That's good. So let's start telling one another and working together to expand these kinds of charitable efforts on our part, so the young people could see us doing these things. And they don't just come up with the boogeyman stuff off of the internet, you know? And so I think if we try to come up with things that have us working in unity on some of these charitable programs every year across jurisdiction, you will see a greater growth.
And I'm going to say this to all the brothers who are in the chat. I got some Prince Hall brothers in the chat. I got some internationals. I got some modern frees. I got all sorts of jurisdiction in the chat. Please listen to what he's saying, because a lot of you are hung up on this jurisdictional thing and you can't build with that. You're so busy trying to explain and say, I got this versus you got that, till you're missing out on the power that we harness together. Listen to what he just said. And when you're able to get there, then we can move forward. Until we get there, we're not going to move forward. And this is what I believe the professor is trying to explain to us as far as what masonry can do if we're really truly wanting to apply it. A few of us wants that, but I'm talking for those who are in leadership, those who actually have the capability of reaching to the Grand Master and getting him to see, look, we got to do better than what we're doing. It's too many of us. Do you know how many Black Masons there are? I mean, legitimately thinking. And the power that we harness, if we choose to harness the power. But our leadership got to step up.
Hey, Tony.
Yes, go ahead.
What you're speaking about, and if I wish I can get into my old hard drive, was in a letter that was given to me from a mainstream Mason in a conversation that Hugo was having with somebody out here in the United States, maybe 20 years ago. The same exact thing you're saying. And this is the same reason why I say it shouldn't just be from the leadership. It has to be from every body of the craft that are Black Masons. We need to stop this nonsense.
Right.
We cannot condone the nonsense. We should if we see our brothers doing it, we the leaders have to educate them. Bruh, this is not the way. This is not the path. Because the path you're on is not the productive path for the universe. It's a destructive force.
And
we're a universal movement. And
Absolutely.
when you're working against the universe, you're the destructive force in the universe. You're part of the chaos, not part of the order. Absolutely.
Thank you, brother. Absolutely. Well said. Because that very behavior that they're doing is anti-Freemasonry. It is anti-Masonry. It is not what Masonry teaches us to do or to be. And so this unity is necessary because it's how the universe works. I mean, all these planets are spinning around, but nobody's bumping into nobody, right? All these stars flying around, but ain't nobody burning up nobody. You know what? Because they're following the most fundamental rule of the universe, that is harmony and balance, you know? And that harmony and balance can exist between us, from lodge to lodge and jurisdiction to jurisdiction, from city to city, state to state, and country to country. If we would get ourselves together as Freemasons, we would save Africa, we would save the Caribbean, we would save Black men and women anywhere we are in the world. You see? But we must take that responsibility that God and the ancestors have given us a tool. Let's use the tool that they've given us.
Absolutely. Let's use those tools. Anybody else got questions?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Brother Little.
And one of the questions I have is, if, let's say, as back in the day, I had guys when I was younger, I looked up to them. As I got older, I knew knowledge-wise, I superseded them. And what I did look up to them for, I learned some things. I had to unlearn some of the things that I was taught.
Yes,
And
sir.
for me, what I see in masonry is when you have leadership everywhere. I'm not just talking about one organization. When you have leadership everywhere, that is carotid, because people have to learn to grow and have to learn to do things different. Sometimes change is hard, but where do we start from having leaders that say, hey, you know what? I don't care what y'all used to say. This is my brother over here. This is my brother over here. Brother Johann said he's PHA. I'm not. Me and him work together every day, and we're really good friends. Why is it that we can't sit in the lodge together? Because it is forbidden fruit in his organization. So when do we have leaders start bucking the
When
new
we
norm?
start call for it. Let the young people call for it in mass. Saying this Freemasonry is Freemasonry. So no matter what temple you're in, what lodge you're in, or what name you have, the body of knowledge that go from 1 to 2 to 3 is the same body of knowledge. So what are you talking about? Okay. That body of knowledge that we all have to practice is that same body of knowledge. That's what I mean when I say the sun that shines on China is the same sun that shines on South Carolina. Same sunlight, same energy, you know? And so the body of knowledge that is masonry is the sun. When we talk about the light in the east, we ain't talking about that damn lamp we got up there. We flipping a switch on. We're talking about the body of knowledge that has come forth out of the east. The east being our most ancient place of dwelling that we know, you know? And that body of knowledge is what's going to illuminate our environment. But like the brother just said, there are things that as time go on, there are things in a culture that is no longer useful or workable for the condition and environment you find yourself in, and must be discarded for things that can do a better job at the same thing.
Absolutely.
That's evolution and transformation. And masonry speaks to that throughout its lessons.
That's one of the things you say, Brother Little. Masonry is a progressive science. It's forever changing. It's never staying the same.
Never, if it's static, it dies.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Anyone else? So I know we're about to come to a close. We've been on here for about right at 2 hours. And I personally want to say thank you to everyone who's popped on. King Taurus, what do you got to say?
I have a question, but I'd like to ask it offline with everybody here.
Oh, okay. Well, everybody stay online. I'm gonna log off of the live feed for the YouTube, and we're gonna continue this because there's some things I want to say publicly on the Zoom that I can't necessarily say on the YouTube. So with that being said, for those who are on the YouTube channel, as always, I want to say I appreciate you coming on and joining us. And remember this, keep your light on, stay out the bushes. I am not your study guy, but I'm here to help you study. Thank you, everyone. We're going to log off of the live streaming for YouTube, and we're going to continue to have this conversation more openly. Thank you.